Welcome to the Route Lab tutorial on the cryogenic disruption of yeast using the Wretch PM100 planetary ball mill. This protocol will demonstrate the method used to cryogenically lyse frozen yeast cells. Because liquid nitrogen is used to cool the grinding jars and grinding balls, cryo gloves should be worn when handling these items. Prepare the stainless steel jar and stainless steel balls for grinding by immersing them in liquid nitrogen. In this demonstration, we are using a 125 milliliter jar and 11 20 millimeter stainless steel balls. The jar and balls have been sufficiently cooled when the liquid nitrogen is no longer bubbling vigorously. Make sure to pour out any liquid nitrogen that is in the grinding jar prior to adding your frozen cells. Once chilled, add your noodles to the jar. The 125 milliliter jar can grind up to 50 mils of noodles at one time. Now add the stainless steel balls to the jar. To grind 50 mils of noodles, 7 to 9 balls are required. Ideally, the jar should be approximately 2/3 full with noodles and balls. Place the lid securely on the jar. Weigh the jar with its contents and check that the counterbalance is set to the correct weight. Then place the jar into the rotating base of the grinder. The groove on the bottom of the jar should fit snugly in the groove of the rotating base. Secure the jar using the provided clamp. The base of the clamp should sit in the center of the jar's lid. When the jar is secure, shut the lid of the grinder and start your grinding cycle. It is imperative that you hear rattling. If there is no rattling, it is not considered a grinding cycle. This is an example of what you should hear. When the 3-minute cycle is complete, return the jar to the ice bucket filled with liquid nitrogen. Do not completely immerse the jar in liquid nitrogen or take the lid off of the jar, as both can result in cell loss. Instead, pour liquid nitrogen over the lid of the jar to help return it to its cooled state. Here we use a 50 milliliter falcon tube attached to a spatula to pour liquid nitrogen over the jar. When the jar has been recooled, return it to the grinder for a second grinding cycle. Repeat the grinding and cooling steps 7 more times. During the 8th grinding cycle, prepare a 50 milliliter falcon tube in which you will store the grindate by cooling it in a separate box filled with liquid nitrogen. At the end of 8 grinding cycles, your noodles will be in the form of powder. Transfer the powder to the pre-cooled falcon tube. To prevent the powder from melting, the falcon tube should be kept in liquid nitrogen during the transfer process. If the powder is packed in the jar, you can scrape it out using a spatula. Try to occasionally cool your spatula to prevent any powder from melting. Store the frozen yeast cell powder at -80 degrees centigrade until ready for use.